So our topic is powerful conversation, and let me introduce quickly to me and Samina. Samina, are you there? If you can unmute yourself.
Hi everyone. Samina here.
Samina, thank you, Samina, for joining in. So, guys, this is more about. I know this is Agile coaching retreat, but this is more about the powerful conversation and in the professional coaching world, and I'll try to connect it with the Agile world as well. So we'll be learning a lot of new techniques, different types about the conversations and how we can apply this in Agile transformation in a different company environment, and how this also can be implemented in your workplace and also in your personal life. So Samina is the professional coach, and she's also ICF trainer and my first mentor in professional coaching. She is the inspiration. I jumped in the coaching field. I'm actually from a techie guy, very techie guy. So Samina is the main person who dragged me in this world. And thank you, Samina, for that. She is my teacher as well in this area. And other than that, Samina, you can quickly introduce yourself, what you're doing.
Yeah, so Mohsin, I think you've said enough, and without taking more time, just that I'm a coach, a trainer, and I mostly enjoy working with NPOs, non-profit organization focused on women's empowerment, where we seek to uplift them through business coaching and mentoring and microfinance. And I'm also an educator. I'm a lecturer. I teach economics and English language. And that's about it. And this is my passion. It has been a pleasure coaching people, teaching people how to become coaches and spreading awareness about it in Pakistan, because it's relatively new there.
Okay, thanks very much, Samina. And guys, I have shared one URL on the chat. We will be using this whole form in the whole session. There will be multiple sections, and this is some kind of form where we will be doing some surveys and you will be doing some practice questions as well. And you can open it, but don't submit it. We will be filling this form in different sections. So just open it up. So the agenda of the session is like we'll be starting with a survey and we'll move on to the conversation and perception gap. Samina will be covering these areas. Then we'll move to 4 powerful conversation in successful workplace. So that's kind of important, that how a successful workplace, we will be encountering different kind of scenarios, different kind of situations. So what would be the best way to address those areas? And then we'll move on to 4 powerful conversation in coaching. So we have a lot of scenarios in Agile transformation, especially, and in the daily work scenarios where we encounter several situations where, take an example, a person is very down to the transformation, or you can say it's very resistance in their department to move on. So in these areas, the Agile coaches, how they can respond and what kind of conversation they need to initiate. So we'll be covering those as well. There will be different activities. I have recorded some peer coaching videos as well. So we'll be showing that. So just be with us, and I'll try to make it very interactive. There will be multiple examples. And okay. So starting with that, okay, I just want to make sure that all of you have started the survey. So I'll be starting with the survey. So take maximum 2 minutes to fill out the survey. The survey is the first form where there will be some questions. Please don't include the other types in the survey. That's starting with the initiative conversation. You only need to fill in the first step, first section, with the heading of survey, with yes and no. So Samina, over to you about the survey and then conversation. So we'll take maximum 2 minutes and we'll move on with the conversation and perception gap.
Thank you, Mohsin. Right.
So this is actually survey questions, but overall they must be.
So we have a couple of survey questions, and please, we have at least 7, I think. And then just to choose the top 5 that would resonate with you. that you can identify with, and just let us know what you think about it.
Okay, so I'm also sharing the survey on my screen. So these are the questions. You only need to fill in the first section, this one. Don't need to go for the next one, just the first one. Yes, Samina, you can start now. And you can explain the survey, by the way, if you want to see the results, I can check that. For now, like it's since it's not be submitted, because we also need to cover the rest of the section, then they can submit it. So this is something that you have to go with this. I'm moving to the slides. So do you want me to survey questions or to next one?
Oh, we can just move on to the next one.
This one?
Hi.
Thank you.
Yeah. Hello, this is Rachel. There are some questions in the chat about the meaning of the yes or no. Some are asking if yes, I am comfortable having this conversation, or is it yes, I would like to hear more about it. Some more context about the yes and no answers in the survey.
Yeah. So, Rachel, thanks for your question. The survey is about what type of situations do you struggle to hold a conversation in. For example, if you have a problem regarding your peer's work habits and he's not engaged, do you struggle to hold that conversation with him or her? Or do you not hold a good conversation there? So if you are struggling, you mark a yes. If you do not struggle, you mark a no.
Okay, thank you so much for the clarification.
Shall we move on? Samina?
I think we're good to go. If there are no more questions, no, we go to the, yeah. So guys, as you can see the questions, they were just broad things from everyday life, from your professional and personal workspace, that we decided to pose as questions so that you could understand the challenges that we face when communicating with people. We choose to avoid a lot of conversations, and some of the common challenges that we face could be broadly labeled under team cohesion, keeping the team together, working productively as one, conflict management, demotivated employees, change resistance within teams, um, our children in everyday life. We have children, and you want to teach them something, and you need to have a conversation with them, but it's so difficult, right? So value based, teaching them the value of maybe manners or ethics, and how do you speak to your kids about that? And relationship management in terms of your spouse, your friends, your relatives. So these are the common challenges that we thought is common to everyone that we know and common to us. And I think that resonates mostly with all of us together. Now, all these challenges are, Mohsin, next slide, please. Now, all these challenges that we face in everyday life and where we struggle to hold conversations are a result of, or you can say the root cause is a perception gap, right? And what is a perception gap? Perception gap is simply the difference in perceived reality and goals of speaker and the listener. Yeah, so what is it that I think the reality is and the goal and objective should be, and what is it that the listener is taking it to be? And when people don't talk and people struggle to explain something, what happens is they complain, they do unnecessary work, they ruminate about the problem, they get angry because of this gap. It is frustration. So an example of the perception gap in terms of team cohesion would play out as, I mean, the employees are going to focus more on the competition. They expect, they're saying that the way to achieve the company's goals is through peer competition, to shine out from your colleagues and not collaboration. Whereas the management would be thinking about, collaborate and achieve the goals together. So that's basically the perception gap between the objective is usually the same, but how you're going to achieve the objective is where the gap occurs. Now, what is the consequence of these gaps? The consequence are that it results in, suppose, something like demotivated employees. So organizations or cultures where you have such perception gaps, employees are 32% less likely to be motivated, and they affect commitment to organization and subsequently productivity and profitability. Um, Joseph Grenny, he's a master coach, he's an author of a very good book, Crucial Conversations, and he says that approximate loss on average to an organization with such perception gaps is around $7,500 and approximately 8 work days. And that becomes a lot per employee. Yeah. So next, please. So what do we do when you have such gaps? If you have such gaps in your organization, that what you call culture chasms, you need to fix these gaps. And the place to start, according to Joseph Rennie, is with dialogue or conversation. So let's understand what dialogue is. Dialogue comes from the root word, Latin word dia, it means across, and log means pick out the words. So essentially, dialogue is about speaking across. It's always a connection between two. Another word is conversation. Con means with, and verse means turn. So essentially, a conversation is about turning about with and keeping company with. Essentially, when you talk to someone, you converse, you're not going to be just going on another track and the listener on another track. It's all about turning and blending with the speaker, with their perception, and aligning both your perceptions and then going with the flow. So this was a brief background to our words that we use. Now, in any conversation, you have 3 components to it. And those are speech, which is about words and your voice. There's silence, and then there's somatics or body language. And together with these 3 elements, you make up a powerful exchange. And how effective you are depends on your ability to navigate through all 3 aspects. So let's understand speech a bit more. Your speech is made up of your words and voice, right? The meaning of the purpose of any communication is the meaning behind it. So be aware of the meaning people receive. If there's a loss in understanding, the purpose of the communication is lost. So what would be some effective tips for word selection or a vocabulary? Just start very simply. Simple is best. Be brief and be simple. Use very simple words that are easily understood. So the map that they play in your mind is the same map that is played out in the other person's mind. Yeah, there should be no confusion regarding the meaning. And this is very true for different cultures, where one word, especially if you're speaking something in English and you're a non-native speaker, these words and their meaning, how they play out, can really affect the tone of the conversation or how the conversation is going to be understood. So be careful of that. Then you have trigger words. Avoid trigger words. Now, trigger words are generally such words that cause people to react at a very subconscious level to what is being said. So they don't really respond. They just really react. And it causes them to be defensive. It causes them to be closed to the other person's perspective. Yeah, it is more like pre-programmed DNA within your system. You don't even know how you're doing or how you're saying or what you're saying when you really do say so. Next slide, please, Mohsin. So some explanation further into trigger words or negative trigger words and these things that you should avoid. The first category is generalization and language of absolutes. How often do you know yourself and find yourself using always, never, constantly? An example would be, you always make mistakes like this. I mean, do you know your response when you hear something like that? It's a broad generalization, always doing it. Next is command words. Sentences where we use should, must, need to. Imperatives. You must try better next time. Yeah. Then you have the language of negatives. Not, cannot, will not, do not. Now, if you hear this in response to someone's inquiry, it triggers a very negative response. I mean, if someone says it's a request and you say, no, I can't or I won't, it's a very negative response, and then the other person triggers a similar response. So try and keep a more open and positive frame of mind to make the conversation more conducive to your goals. The next one is non-committals. Non-committals is a language of doubt. I'll try. Yeah, maybe. Or perhaps I could do that. When these doubts are created and it's listened to, it does not help in accomplishing our goals. So try and focus on what can be accomplished rather than what cannot be accomplished. Avoiding these trigger words will allow trust to be created and for the conversation to move in a very positive direction. All right, Mohsin, next please. So moving from negative phrasing to positive ones, how do you frame your conversation or use words that are not negative and more positive and conducive? First of all, replace expressions that suggest and imply carelessness, like lying, pressure and sarcasm, blame. Do not use any blame frames within your statements. Instead of, and try and incorporate more expressions of respect, confidence, and commitment to help the other person. Now, this is especially true for your employees. In the hierarchy, this matters when you're at a position of power. It matters that you convey your respect and confidence in your employee and your commitment to help them through a problem. So instead of failing to say, of saying something like, I fail to understand how you can suggest something like this, try using something like, I understand you have a different perspective. Let me explain mine. Right? So that's how you would move from a negative phrasing, a blame frame, to a more positive one. The next aspect of speech is our voice. And our voice and tone is very important. It provides added emphasis, intent, and emotion behind the words we say. So it essentially complements the words you're saying. Yeah? And they build credibility, or they can lead to coerced compliance. So your tone will indicate whether an employee is going to do your work. Is it because of the trust they have, or is it because they've been forced to do it? Right? And your voice and tone will build trust, but most importantly, it helps the listener to identify the personality, which is the speakers. So essentially, the conversation, if you notice, it isn't really about just what is being said. It is mostly about who is saying it, which is why the same words spoken by different people will land differently in people, and they will trigger a different response in the listener. The, how you identify someone's personality is their projection. Your personality is identified with your projection. And how you are going to project your personality will definitely affect the perception of your message. So reform your being, reform your personality and its projection to refine the quality or perception of your message. All right. Next we come to voice. Now, voice is about your tone, your cadence, your pitch, and some tips to help you create more impact, deepen your voice. That will create a sense of calm and conveys confidence. I mean, how often have we heard shrill speakers, people with shrill voices and not been very comfortable? That's psychology, right? It triggers a negative response. So try to speak from a little bit at your epiglottis, like go deeper in your throat, and that creates a better impact. Soften your voice. Relaxing your eyes and throat and heart will soften the voice and create a lot of receptivity to the message you're giving. And a lot of physical exercises. I mean, if you want to try, you can try putting 4 fingers. Can you see my screen? So you can try using these 4 fingers and inserting in your mouth right before a speech and see your jaw relax. And then when you speak, your jaw is more relaxed and your tone will be more relaxed too. So you can try and it really works that way. Pace your voice. By pacing you mean slow down your words, slow down this rate of your speech. Nobody is comfortable with a speech which is going too fast and they're not able to catch up with it. Slowing down gives time for the listener to understand and for speakers also to be conscious of their feeling and expression, what is happening within them. Yeah, so pacing is very important. So here were a few tips for your speech. We then understand the second component of a conversation, silence. Now, what is silence? Silence is simply noise gaps in conversation. Yeah. And it is really an essential part of conversation, perhaps sometimes more important than the spoken words, because we pay so little attention to it. When it comes to the art of conversation, silence can be a response or it can be a reaction. And based on that, the outcome of your conversation will follow. So let's understand 2 types of silences. There's constructive and there's destructive. Constructive silence is a response. It's thought out. It's there for a reason, and it helps to move the discussion forward in a positive way. And we have destructive silence, which creates barriers to expressions of thought and reaction. And that's the reaction that needs to be avoided by speakers. Moving on to, Mohsin, can we move on, please? Right, somatics. So somatics is generally body language. It's, you've heard actions speak louder than words. 80 to 90% of the meaning of any message lies in its non-verbal aspect, correct? So what are the components? It's eye contact, posture, gesture, and facial expressions. Next, please. Right. Here are some fun facts about, I think we've gone ahead. Right. So body language, sorry, no, just go back, please. Yeah. After that. Fun facts about body language. It happens without conscious awareness. Most of the time you do not know what is happening. It's open to interpretation. Your ability to read anyone's body language depends on emotional intelligence, and even experts cannot predict with 100% accuracy what is someone's perspective or response to what they're saying. Micro expressions are a better predictor of true feelings. It's micro expressions are simply, next slide please. Micro expressions are simply little bit of facial movements that relay what you're feeling, and it's not really observed unless seen on camera closely, and they're a very effective predictor of your feelings. Effective body language should be upright and open posture. You should have good eye contact, holding gaze for a couple of seconds while speaking, and keeping your fingers still. Touching your face or hair causes a sense of distrust, and it makes the listener doubt your message and your honesty. And keep a relaxed and open facial expression. That helps people to connect better with you. And here are a few postures that you can see that are examples of effective body language. Next, please. Right. So we come to Phil Harkin's model of the Tower of Power, and he simply described 4 steps of effective conversation between a leader and the employee. And he's just talked about the first step, where you ask questions so that there's a clear communication, you create empathy, you then rigorously test their thinking. Do not assume, understand more, ask your employees more about a certain issue, get confirmation, then you explore new actions, new possibilities, explore barriers and options, and then you go on to an action plan with commitment. Make sure that all the stakeholders are committed there. Next slide, please, Mohsin. And just an example of a powerful conversation format. You have, how would you start? So between a typical employee and employer conversation, you have a situation being presented where you be positive and patient, stated without any emotional fallout, in a very neutral fashion, and you use questions. You ask the employee's point of view with open-ended questions. Your tone has to be very positive, and do not be in a blame where you're trying to catch hold of the mistakes rather than guiding them through it. Next, please. Third is get agreement, very important. Ask for details and get them to agree, clarify any assumptions you've made, and then move on. Set suggestions for improvement. Ask it from your employees, what is it? Multiple options, explore the benefits and difficulties, and keep a very helpful and non-judgmental attitude towards it. Next up is establishing action plan based on SMART. It has to be specific and measurable, and your coach's role in achieving has to be very specific and mentioned there. And of course, for any plan to be effective, you have to relay confidence in your employee's ability to change, get a firm commitment, and set time for feedbacks, for check-ins with employees so that the plan is being followed and if any changes need to be made for effectiveness. And that's about it. I think, Mohsin, over to you.
Thanks very much, Samina, and that's really helpful. So, guys, so far that was like related to the conversation and how we can apply this in different situations. So, moving on to the powerful conversation. This is an interaction between the two people. So basically there I'll be discussing different types in the workplace point of view and then from coaching point of view. So we have a time-bound session over here. So definitely I'll be moving on with the specific types that, and we'll be doing some activities as well. I have already shared the form with you, and all these types are mentioned in the form with respect to the different sections. So from workplace point of view, these are the 4 different types, mostly the leaders and the managers and the supervisors and the coach, they follow to have a good and powerful conversation. Initiative, conversation, understanding, performance, and closure. So I have different activity and different measures to do that. Take an example, if in a company, being the leader, you are going to take some initiative, and what kind of measures you want to take, and what kind of checklists, and how you can create a powerful conversation on a particular initiative. So this is something that we'll be talking about. Initiative conversation is something where you will be creating a future. Take an example. There's a new initiative in your firm, or being the leader or the manager, you are like taking a new initiative in your company. There's a new project and there is a new policy change sort of thing. So in that manner, mostly leaders, they have to think about, they need to brainstorm that what kind of conversation we are going to have with their employees, what kind of, you can say, statements they need to address with their staff. And basically, these kind of conversations are used by the leadership for the new initiatives, policy rollouts, changes. Those are like mostly very hard for people who are in the comfort zone, and the transformations, specifically in the agile transformation. So these kind of things that mostly we can target it. This initiative conversation is a proposal for the new future. For example, the Kennedy, he mentioned for first time that if a man lands on the moon, and he made some statement over there. He mentions some visionary statement, okay, by this time, we want a man to step on the moon. And it took around 8 years to that happen. But he made an initiative conversation. He started an initiative conversation there. Similarly, in your work environment, how you can initiate the initiative conversations. And for that happen, we use these kind of tools. For example, what, when, and why. For example, if you are going to have some sort of initiative conversation, before that, you can ask yourself, you can take these steps. What kind of initiative, and when you want to do that, and why you want to do that. Your audience, they are intelligent. They want to have these answers. And the next step for each initiative, that you can answer who, where, and how. And these tools I'll be using in all these conversations. For each conversation, you can use that. The form I have shared with you, that includes all these questions. So after this session, I'll be asking you, you can take up one initiative and you can start filling it to having this impact in your life, what you think about it. Similarly, there's understanding conversation, and that includes to add the people in your conversation and to engage them. Telling someone, okay, so this is the conversation we are going to have, this is the policy we are going to roll out. The people definitely react, the people definitely respond. So how you can handle that? So this is kind of conversation you can set up where the people want to understand the ideas. And to have a successful, a powerful conversation, you need to add those people in your vision. Similarly, people can commit or engaged once they can relate your goals with their career path. This is also very important, how they can relate. So that's the reason this is include and engage. How you can include your audience in your conversation and how they can be engaged. These conversations mostly used in roadmaps, resistance. We have seen a lot of resistance when we are doing the transformation, improvements and implementation. Similarly, there are some other examples as well, performance conversations, and let me move on with this. Okay, sorry, distractions. Okay, so I think that's the next one, performance conversation. This is the third type, ask and promise. So in that case, like when we have already engaged the people in the conversation, now how they can be committed. You can initiate the conversation with the question and answer session, like ask, and you can have the promises after that session, how they can commit to that particular session, how they can be improved for this session. Performance conversation are made requests and promises, and performance conversation is not assessment of the past, it is the agreement for the future. Commit to performance, and this is kind of thing that you can use than when there's already something happened and you need to move on. This is kind of thing where you actually need to create a future, and you need to have some agreements and commitments from your staff or from people you are going to have the conversation. For example, this is a condition. This is a simple example that how many times people do the task. If you hear an idea, if you consciously decide to adapt it. So if I summarize it, mostly people actually do the task when they have the specific accountability appointment with the person you have committed to. With 95% of the people, they do the task at that level. So we need to initiate at that level where they are committed and they are related as well. So performance conversations, also invitations and instructions and requirements and specific. I'll be actually matching all these different conversations with the Scrum events as well. If you see over there in the form, at the Google form, so you can see all these sessions, and there will be different questions about all the initiatives and conversations you can see. So there, I think someone is unmuted. I can hear the voice. So closure, create endings, that's also very much important. And closure conversation is kind of thing that mostly I use this in retrospective meeting in Scrum, where this is something that there is incomplete past and you want to build a future on it. There were some mistakes and there were some problems that you have faced, and you're going to have a conversation. So it's a good way that you address the problem first. You can apologize for different areas those went wrong, and then you can build the future conversation on it. So other than that, I have already shared the details with you on the form, Google form, so you can check that, and we can fill it out with respect to the details. If you can relate yourself with initiative on all these conversations. And if there are any questions, I will be happy to take those questions. And just an example of using all these conversations is the situations you can see over here. And this example is also available on the Google form as well. So for example, people are not doing what they said they would do when they said they would do. So you can start with the initiative conversation, and then you can move on to the understanding conversation. And then you can also have a performance conversation, make requests and promises to resolve the issue. Closure would be follow-up to review the results and create agreements or change agreements. Similarly, people are taking a long time to do things. You can start with the performance, because this is something people are not doing well. You can start with the performance conversation, and then we can go for the closure. Similarly, people are resisting. This is some kind of thing that you can relate with the Agile transformation. And this is some where you can start with the closure, that because we want to see the retrospective, we want to see what went wrong, what was the problem. And then you can move on to the performance. And then we have people seem confused, uncertain, and people have different ideas. So all these areas, all these different conversation types are available and given on the Google Form activity, and you can use that. You can take up one initiative and you can relate these conversations with that. So do we have any question? I'm happy to answer. Otherwise...
Yeah, thanks Mohsin and Samina. Yeah, we do have a couple of questions. I was just going to say, I thought really useful psychology in everything you were saying. I really loved it. Can't wait to try this. Can't wait to try it out myself. And like I said, I'm definitely coming over to visit you in the snow as soon as I'm allowed to travel. I've even got the earmuffs. So yeah, thanks. That was awesome. Rachel, yeah, there were a couple of questions, weren't there? Do you want to just share those while we wrap up?
Yeah, there's one that has a lot of participants asking actually. Now that you mentioned a while ago about the body language, a lot of things about eye contact and how you carry yourself. But now that we're in the virtual world, everyone working from home, what are the tips and tricks that you can share with us on how we can overcome this barrier?
Samina, that's for you.
Am I audible? There's some problem in my mic. Is my voice clear?
Yes. So
Yeah.
far.
So
Yeah.
yes, there are a lot of limitations in this virtual conversation that we hold, but then I guess you need to work more on your tone, your gaze, right? Your voice modulation, your eye contact, that will matter. And also your movements, because we're not just limited. We do have video calls on, so at least a part of us can be seen, and with fingers, posturing outward, towards, it it can be worked. I mean, I think it is a challenge, but with those limitations also you can still move ahead. Does that answer your question? Or what to do when people are reluctant to open the videos? Well, I guess then you just work on your tone and your voice modulation, your cadence, your pitch, and genuinely be patient and willing and curious to know what is being asked of you.
That's very common problem, by the way, being us as a trainer and doing these sessions online. That's very hard.
Thanks, guys. That was awesome. So yeah, if you had a question about today's talk that you didn't get a chance to cover off, do not fret. Just you can get in touch with all the speakers today in the attendee forum on Swapcard. So just reach out to them. There is a channel on there, APAC Attendee Network. So go on there and you can carry on this conversation to your heart's content. We are on time, so we're just going to take a short break now, and we'll come back in 5 minutes, and we'll return with personal agility. See you then.
Okay, so one thing, Darren, I want to mention that all these templates and all these tools we'll be sharing in documents with you guys, so that will be available publicly to everyone. We can access that.
Excellent. We'll endeavour to share those links in here, and we'll also put it on Swapcard. Awesome. Thanks, guys.
Okay.